the car. Okay, you ready to go? Look at that all over your face. I need these sunglasses. Okay, we're gonna go laundromat. Gotta go see the laundry lady. You like the laundry lady. She likes you. She likes to see you.
And leading Broadway.
A little cooperation from local and from local and state officials, I think the chaos would go way down in this community. Go ahead.
After the Renee Good shooting, sir, the administration seems to...
Yeah, well, you can go next.
Oh, no, sorry. I'll get the point.
No, that's fine. I'll take both.
After the Renee Good shooting, sir, the administration seems to... After the Renee Good shooting, the administration seems to suggest that ICE officers enjoyed near complete immunity. But today you told the Washington Examiner that when appropriate, the administration might take disciplinary actions against ICE agents. So is that a change in opinion? And if so, why did you tell them?
No, I didn't say, and I don't think any other official within the Trump administration said that officers who engaged in wrongdoing would enjoy immunity. That's absurd. What I did say is that when federal law enforcement officers violate the law, that is typically something that federal officials would look into. We don't want these guys to have kangaroo courts. We want them to actually have real due process, real investigation, because again, sometimes they're accused of wrongdoing, and it turns out when you learn the context, they didn't actually do anything wrong. But of course, we're going to investigate these things. Of course, we're investigating the Renee Good shooting, but we're investigating them in a way that respects people's rights and then ensures that if somebody did something wrong, yes, they're going to face disciplinary action, but we're not going to judge them in the court of public opinion. I've spoken at length on this particular case. I think that Renee Good's death is a tragedy. I also think that she rammed an ICE officer with her car. So the tragedy here is multi-layered. The tragedy is there was a misunderstanding. The tragedy is that Renee Good lost her life. The tragedy is that you have ICE officers who are going into communities where they're worried that if they call 911, no one's going to come to help them. That is what produces this terrible situation, and it's something state and local officials here in Minnesota could solve. Yes, sir.
Could you give us a message towards the March for Life tomorrow, especially regarding this cooperation and family values? It's a shame the kids have to get caught up in all this, and towards that.
Well, it is a shame that kids have to get caught up in this. I am speaking at March for Life tomorrow. I'm pro-life, and I'm very excited to speak there. I want to talk about local law enforcement, but I am. As a child, I saw people in my family get arrested. It's terrible. It's heartbreaking, it's chaotic, it's traumatic for the kids. I could recognize that, and I could recognize that we got to support these kids, while on the other hand saying that just because you're a parent doesn't mean that you get complete immunity from law enforcement. And I think we have to hold both of those thoughts in our head at the same time. We've got to be sympathetic to the kids who are caught up in some of these enforcement actions. We've also got to say we have to enforce the law without bias, with fairness, but we've got to enforce the law.
Mr. Vice President!
Thinking about local government, there was a clash in St. Cloud roughly a week ago, and their mayor said they haven't heard about ICE being in the city. And how does ICE kind of proactively work with these local agencies? What are those policies, and what's your response to that allegation?
You said there was an altercation in St. Cloud. Yeah.
The incident, the mayor said that ICE did not communicate with them that they were in the city for a major operation. The police chief did not know about the operation at the time. Could you talk a little bit about proactive communication with local law enforcement?
Yeah, it's one of the takeaways. I've talked with these guys before we came on the stage, but during our roundtable and some of the other conversations we've had, communication, we absolutely want to ensure there's good communication between federal officials and state and local officials. And I'm sure that we can do better on that. We absolutely want to make sure that we are communicating, but that also requires a two-way street. And that's the point that I make about state and local officials. These guys will absolutely communicate with state and local officials. They'll tell people if they have to do an enforcement operation in a particular municipality. But part of that is they also want to ensure that if they're communicating about their whereabouts, that's not being used as a weapon against them. Sometimes they tell people where they're going, and then they find out that their agents' faces are on on Reddit or on some social media thread saying, here's this guy, we know he's going to be at this place at this exact time. So that communication has got to be a two-way street. These guys are going to communicate with business leaders, with local officials, with state officials, but we also need the local officials and state officials to do a good job of protecting people when they're in their communities. We're not asking, by the way, we don't want any police officer in this community, in this state, to help us do immigration enforcement. We've got that. But if a protester shows up and that protester turns violent against our immigration officers, we really, really need the cooperation of our local partners. We haven't gotten it yet, but I think if we do, we really can lower the temperature. Yeah.
This week,
Calling at the Washington Post reported today that an ICE memo allows agents to enter people's houses without a judge's warrant. What do you say to people who are concerned about this violating the Constitution, and how much is this tactic being used?
Yeah, so I saw that story, and the story is like so much that I read in the mainstream media. It's missing a whole lot of context, and when you appreciate the context, it makes sense. No one is saying, I mean, look, there are exceptions. For example, a crazy exception, if somebody is fired at from inside a house, they don't need a warrant to go inside that person's house. There are very narrow exceptions to the warrant requirement where law enforcement officers don't need a warrant if, for example, they're an imminent threat of their lives. But what we've said and what ICE has proposed, what the Department of Homeland Security really has proposed in the Department of Justice, is that we can get administrative warrants to enforce administrative immigration law. Now, it's possible, I guess, that the courts will say no, and of course, if the courts say no, we would follow that law, but nobody is talking about doing immigration enforcement without a warrant. We're talking about different types of warrants that exist in our system. Typically what happens, not always, but typically in the immigration system, those are handled by administrative law judges. So we're talking about getting warrants from those administrative law judges. And then, of course, with other cases, you get judges or you get warrants from a judge. That's very consistent with the practice of American law. I'm sure the courts will weigh in on that, but we're never going to enter somebody's house without some kind of a warrant, unless, of course, somebody's firing on an officer or they have to do something in order to protect themselves.
Follow up on that. Do you believe that you can forcibly enter with an administrative warrant, or would that be a violation of the Fourth Amendment?
Well, our understanding is that you can enforce the immigration laws of the country under an administrative order if you have an administrative warrant. That's what we think. That's our understanding of the law. That's our best faith attempt to understand the law. Again, this is something courts will weigh in on. I won't speak to that. But yes, most immigration law in our country is not done through the criminal system with the judge. It's done through the administrative law system. We're going to continue that practice just as they did in the Biden administration or any other administration.
was there anything that you heard or saw today that would cause you to counsel the president to invoke the Insurrection Act? And then also, did you meet or talk to the ICE agent who was involved in the Renee Good incident?
Now, I did not talk to him today. I talked to some of his colleagues.
Come on. Let's go see the laundry lady. Whoa. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. No.
You're gonna get lost in all the snow we getting.
I know, we gotta go to Walmart and get some food before it hits.
Yeah. They'll be going, where did she go?
We can pick this up tomorrow. I'm in no hurry.
Okay, let me get your phone number again.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, they won't be able to find me. You'll be buried in the snow. I'll call you tomorrow as soon as I get it done.
Alrighty, thank you, hon.
My hands are cold.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be freezing this weekend.
Yeah.
Huh?
It gets so cold back here, that's why I had it shut, trying to keep some of the
Yeah,
cold
yeah,
air
yeah.
back
I don't
here.
blame you.
And
Yeah.
this one, I got my little heater in.
Oh, well, good. Yeah, well, keep the door closed. We'll see you later. Come here. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come here.
Unique to this city. This is not a common thing across the United States. There's been a very unique, very Minneapolis-specific reaction to our enforcement of federal immigration laws. What I'm trying to do here today is understand why that is. What is it about Minneapolis that has become so chaotic? What are the specific types of cooperation that we need? Look, I don't need Tim Walz or Jacob Frey or anybody else to come out and say that they agree with J.D. Vance or Donald Trump on immigration. I just don't need that. What I do need them to do is empower their local officials to help our local or help our federal officials out in a way where this can be a little bit less chaotic and it can be a little bit more targeted. Like if we're trying to find a sex offender, tell us where the guy lives. Simple things like that, simple changes in how they're approaching immigration enforcement would make this work a lot better. It would make Minneapolis' streets a lot safer. And it would make this whole thing a lot less traumatic for this community. I'll take one more question.
Mr. Vice President,
You've said that it's time to turn down the temperature. Does that include changes to both ICE and CBP tactics that we've seen employed on the streets, including less than lethal tactics, pepper spray, pepper balls? Beyond that, what is the federal government's role in turning down the temperature? And the Minnesota Department of Corrections says that its own officers have been cooperating with ICE all along, handing over criminals once they serve their sentences to ICE officials. Can you concede that there is
Somebody's in trouble.
Yeah, I was going to list the 5 agencies locally and statewide that I'm most worried about. I wouldn't put the Department of Corrections on that list. I think that while there are certain things we'd like to see more from them, they've hardly been the worst offenders. You agree with that, guys? That's a fair assessment. But I think when you talk about tactics and you talked about the response to things, look, we don't want to employ tactics that we don't employ the kind of tactics that are only necessary when violence is committed against officers. That is these guys' directive, and that's what we're going to try to do. And again, you see, the president said this a couple of days ago. Whenever you have a law enforcement operation, even if 99.99% of the guys do everything perfectly, you're going to have people that make mistakes. That is the nature of law enforcement. What I do think that we can do is, working with state and local officials, we can make the worst moments of chaos much less common. And
Alexa, take me to Walmart.
There is a Walmart grocery 4.3 miles away on 12862 State Route 21. Do you want to get directions to that one?
Yes.
Getting directions to Walmart grocery at 12862 State Route 21.
Meet us halfway. These guys want to communicate with them. They want to talk to the local business leaders. Many of these guys, many of the people standing behind me are members of the Minneapolis community. Many of the officials that I met today who work in federal immigration enforcement, this is their home.
In 400 feet, turn right onto North 3rd Street.
To work a lot more smoothly,
Turn right onto North 3rd Street.
At it a little bit, and we need some cooperation from state and local officials. Last thing that I'll say is
Your route may be affected by winter storm warning.
even in this weather, I love Minneapolis.
I'm sure I'll get
we could do a lot better. We could do a lot more with more cooperation. The Trump administration, the directive that I got from the President of the United States is meet these guys halfway. Work with them so that we can make these immigration enforcement operations successful without endangering our ICE officers, and so that we can turn down the chaos.
At the next stop sign, turn left.
But for us to do that, we need some help from the state and local officials. We will keep on working with them, and so long as they're willing to work with us, they
At the stop sign, turn left onto Clark Street.
enforcement in the Trump administration. Thank you all.
There you have it. Very interesting statements just now from Vice President J.D. Vance. He has spent time today in Minneapolis trying to cool down the temperature, the very tense situation that we have seen on the ground between ICE officials and protesters in Minneapolis, with very little assistance from any law enforcement on the ground. And I think the big message here was, can you meet us halfway? Can you help us with some of these interactions? And he laid out a number of things with regard to better cooperation. And he said, but you can't be telling protesters the names and doxing the faces and addresses of ICE agents if you want to meet halfway. With that, let's bring in Jonathan Fahey, who was watching this along with us, former acting ICE director, former DHS Deputy Assistant Secretary, former federal prosecutor, and now a Holtzman Vogel partner. So someone who's been deeply entrenched in all of this infrastructure around ICE and around Homeland Security. So Jonathan, always good to have you with us. What's your reaction to this I think very forceful and very forward-leaning day from the Vice President in Minneapolis?
I thought it was great because he really outlined what the issues are here and how they can be solved to the point where there isn't the chaos and all of this stuff going on. And what's really important here is when he compares it to the other cities, and even places like Chicago didn't have this level of problems because they had more support from the local police. And I like the way he outlined when, a lot of, and I was a federal prosecutor 17 years. We always worked with the locals, and that's the way you solve the most crime the most efficiently. But when he was talking about you need help finding a sex offender and things like that, that should be common sense for everybody, no matter where they come out on the immigration issue. And you do have these people, you know, I hate to say it, but it really is political with Waltz and Fry that are doing everything they can really to obstruct ICE and doing their job. And just the one point I'm so glad he made, and it's
At the next light, turn left.
ICE and this administration has done so much to make our country safer. I mean, we're going to have the lowest murder rate since, I think they said, 9.
At the light, turn left onto Missouri 21 South.
Record. So they are making people safer, not just in Minneapolis, but everywhere else. But I'm really glad he went in there saying, hey, we want to meet you halfway, we want to cooperate, because, you know, what they're doing, again, they are enforcing the laws that they are required to enforce, and it's an important principle of federalism that the administration continues to enforce laws. We can't have people like Jacob Fry or Tim Waltz essentially vetoing federal law.
Yeah, he said that he did not meet with Governor Waltz today as part of this. Maybe that is something that could happen down the road to calm things down. We'll see. I thought it was very interesting, Jonathan. He was asked, because a lot of the questions surrounded individual actions that have been reported in the local news about apprehensions and things that are very, in some cases, difficult to watch. One of them involved a child who was taken into custody with his father. So J.D. Vance's response to that, the vice president's response was, I've been there. I've watched as members of my family were arrested, and let me tell you, it's not easy.
At the next light, turn left.
Raising what he said here. He said, being a parent does not put you above the law either. Your reaction to that moment?
I thought it was really important that he made that point, because again, you know, as a prosecutor for years and years, a lot of the people you're prosecuting, almost all of them, it seems like, have children, and their prosecution.
At the light, turn left onto Cajun Drive. Then you'll take your first right.
Part of the process. And I do think when you take a look at a lot of these individual incidents, and I don't know any of them with enough specificity to comment on them, but I do know historically when we've seen these things, sometimes the first impression of something doesn't end up being what's ultimately true. We remember from sort of Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot, and things like that. So I do think a lot of times, we need to always take a step back and let things unfold. But the reality of it is, if you're going to enforce the law, it's going to be not only difficult on the people that the laws being enforced on, but also their families. But the greater societal good is we have a safer community, and that's the essential bargain we make as part of a society.
Turn right, then you'll take your first left.
DHS and prosecutor, always great to get your insights. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
But also breaking today, at least 3 arrests in connection with the storming of City's Church in St. Paul by anti-ICE agitators on Sunday, who screamed in the faces of some of these people who were at this worship service. The Trump administration says that the protesters violated the FACE Act, which prohibits harassing people in a place of worship. Senior correspondent Steve Harrigan live in Minneapolis with more on the court appearance for one of these suspects just a short time ago. Hi, Steve.
Martha, that is the first of 3 court appearances. So far, 3 arrests. We heard J.D. Vance say he's trying to bring down the temperature here, but also that if you interrupt a church service, if you make a 9-year-old girl cry in church, the full weight of the federal government will come against you. And that's exactly what we're seeing. The Justice Department making 3 arrests out of a couple of dozen people who interrupted that service for about half an hour, and also saying more are to come. You heard Vance really go over and over saying the big problem here is a lack of cooperation between local and federal law enforcement on the ground. Here's the Vice President.
These guys are trying to go out and enforce the law. They're trying to arrest sex offenders, but they're trying to do it in an environment where local officials have been told, do not help them, do not provide intelligence about where these sex offenders might be. This is disgraceful.
We're seeing these federal officers drive in and drive out. They get whistled at, they get sworn at. When they're out on the road, they get followed. Their vehicles get boxed in. when they try and stop for some coffee or to use the restroom, often they are denied service. So it's really day after day of frustration for people here trying to arrest criminals. Martha, back to you.
Steve Harrigan on the streets in Minneapolis. Thank you very much, Steve. So coming up, we'll speak with Britt Hume as we start to get some more reporting on the outlines of the deal that President Trump began the framework on over Greenland. Next.
Diplo's Run Club Radio, a new channel built by superstar DJ Diplo.
You're the headliner. If you could finish those 5 kilometers, you deserve a great party.
1, 2, 3, let's go! Guaranteed to put your run on the right track. Are you still with me?
I put all of it together to make a great challenge for you guys.
Diplo's Run Club Radio, starting Friday on Channel 105 and on the move with the Sirius XM app.
You want a driving job that pays what you're worth, right? At Cree Carrier, over-the-road starting pay starts at 61 to 66 cents per mile. If you have 1 year experience as a safe driver, we have a great driving job for you. Cree is family-owned, debt-free, and most importantly,
I think we get paid better than the industry.
you need to be talking to Cree, where you're treated like a person. And
Oh, you definitely make money here.
go to CreeCarrier.com for your next driving job.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Now, if a family member or friend asked you for financial advice or where to go for tax help, well, would you send them somewhere with hundreds and hundreds of complaints? Of course not. That's why for years you've heard me say if you do owe back taxes, if you didn't file returns in the years gone by, or if you are a business owner and you're behind on your payroll taxes, you need to call my friends at Rush Tax Resolution today. Now, hiring the wrong company can make your situation a lot worse and put you, your family,